the Tarbuth Foundation presents Jewish Lifestyles with Cynthia Tivers.
You're probably surprised to see that the two young people reading that paper, both papers, are actually quite young and not old and wrinkled. Most people tend to think that Yiddish is a language that has a history and not a future. They think it's a language that belongs to preceding generations, and they don't seem to think that young people today are learning it and taking delight in learning it just as their ancestors did. Well, Yiddish is alive and well, and it's living all over the world. And on today's show, we're going to explore the modern Jewish lifestyle. I'd like to welcome my first guest today. His name is Dr. Mordkhe Schaechter. He's one of the world's most prominent Yiddish linguists. Dr. Schaechter is a lecturer at Columbia University and an associate professor at the Jewish Teachers Seminary. He's involved in many Yiddish cultural groups, including Jugendtrupp, which is a Yiddish youth movement. Hello, Dr. Schaechter, and welcome. Thank you for being with us today. You know, I started to say before that people really are interested and think that Yiddish has a very long history, and I know that you've got some good information for us to tell us how old the language is. How old is it?
Approximately 1,000 years.
And where did it start? What's the derivation of the Yiddish language?
It started around the Rhine, in the basin of the Rhine, when Jews from the parts of Europe that later on became France and Italy, there was no France and Italy at that time, settled in the basin of the Rhine. And out of the merger of the languages they spoke with the German dialects of that time, Yiddish was born.
So that while most of us believe that Yiddish does have a German beginning, it's largely Germanic, you're confirming that it really is largely
Sure,
Germanic.
sure.
In fact, the actual name, Yiddish, is a German word, is it not?
No, it's a Yiddish word.
It's a Yiddish word. What does it mean?
Yiddish means Jewish.
Jewish, okay. Do only Jews speak Yiddish?
Yes, it's like most of the languages in the world, except for the languages of wider circulation like English or French that are spoken by many ethnic groups, but Yiddish or Polish or Czech or Ukrainian or 2,000 other languages are spoken by the people belonging to this particular ethnic group and not by various ethnic groups.
So then Jewish people in Europe, let's say, if they wanted to communicate with people outside the Jewish community, they would be able to talk in their native tongue or the tongue which was indigenous to their country. And when they spoke among themselves, they would speak in Yiddish.
Yes.
Now, did Gentile people also learn to speak Yiddish?
In Eastern Europe, there was quite a number of Gentile people who knew Yiddish.
And again,
Not really too deep, but they had a working knowledge of Yiddish.
at its very peak,
But, excuse me, but the Jews spoke mostly, with the Gentiles, they spoke the Polish or Ukrainian or whatever,
so generally they were bilingual.
bilingual.
So at its peak, how many people in this world spoke Yiddish?
Around 11 million.
And today?
We don't have exact figures for today, but it's much smaller than before the Holocaust.
I have read that it's something like 4 million, and
More or less, but it's not an exact figure. Many countries don't have in their census questions the
Yes.
language questions, so
yes. Now,
it's probably less than 4 million.
where would it be heavily concentrated, those 4 million or the fewer than 4 million?
In some large urban centers of the United States, in Israel, again in large cities in Argentina,
South America.
yeah, South America,
What about some...
here and there in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, only here and there?
Again, in large cities, in Vilna, in Chernobyl, in Kishinev.
I must tell you a very brief personal story. When I was in Russia a couple of years ago, I was traveling around with a little brochure which had my translations, idiomatic translations, and I was trying desperately to get a taxi cab. This was in I think it was in Kiev. I could not get a taxi any place, and I ran the streets, and they didn't want to stop for me. So I went up to a taxi that was sitting in the square outside of a monastery. There was a young man behind the wheel, and I asked him as best I could in Russian, could he take me to Babi Yar, which is where I wanted to go? And he did not understand what I was asking him. So out of nowhere, I was quite surprised. He said to me, "Kannst du reden Yiddish?" So my answer was a bissel, but I was very surprised that, again, it pointed out to me for the first time, I think, ever, what a universal language it really is. I do want to know about the revived interest in America today. I understand that Yiddish is on the upswing, that more and more people are getting interested in it. That's true, and
It is true.
What would you attribute that to?
Well, to a certain extent, this is the result of the interest in ethnic studies, ethnicity. Black is beautiful. The Puerto Ricans are interested in their roots. The Chicanos are. The East European, the people of Slavic origin, and so are the Jews. This is one of the reasons. There are other reasons too.
Isn't it also that young Jewish people want to maintain a contact, a continuity with
Yes.
preceding generations?
Absolutely.
You know, I have to ask one question. The question is, Yiddish seems to be so colorful. It's such a vivid kind of language. What makes it such a descriptive language?
I'll tell you, our attachment to Yiddish is not really the result of it being vivid or colorful. I assume that other languages, if there were some means of measuring vividness, are just as vivid as Yiddish is. But Yiddish is our language. In other words, if there are colorful idioms in other languages, let the other ethnic groups enjoy it. We enjoy ours not because it's so colorful, but because it's ours. It's our own turf.
Okay, but isn't it true that Yiddish has become a receptacle of our experience, of our culture? It expresses our feelings. It's emotive. It's very
Yes.
much a part of the emotional Jewish character. Is that right?
Yes, no question about it.
Okay. I think that is true. I know that I depend on Yiddish at various times when I want to describe something that is otherwise untranslatable. I can only use a Yiddish expression. We have
But
two...
this would hold true for other languages too.
Oh,
except-
I'm sure. I'm just more familiar, I'm
Yes,
sure, with
yes.
Yiddish. We were talking about the revived interest in Yiddish in America today, and there seems to be a youth movement, young people getting involved. And we have two students. We saw them before. They were reading the two Yiddish newspapers, and they're here to tell us a little bit about their studies of Yiddish. They're Gina and Rina Rinkewich. And I say Rinkewich because your aunt told me it was Rinkewich, and it's Rinkewich.
Right.
Right? Okay. So this is Gina and Rina, and I got it right. Girls, how long have you been studying Yiddish?
We've been studying about 8 years.
Each of you 8 years? Where have you studied?
Well, we started out in the Workman's Circle Elementary School for about 4 years, and now we're studying at the Workman's Circle Middle School.
We're going to be discussing Workman's Circle in a little while. It's a Yiddish cultural institution. What have you found most rewarding about your Yiddish studies?
It gives me a chance to understand my heritage better, and you can enjoy the literature, and also to be able to speak with relatives.
Is Yiddish spoken at home a lot? Are both your parents Yiddish-speaking people?
Yes, they are. Yeah,
Is that what sort of encouraged you into studying Yiddish?
yeah because
Yeah.
we began to understand a little bit at home before we actually went to school.
Now, let me ask you a question. I'm going to put you to a test. I want you to answer this in Yiddish, and then I want you to translate, okay? I'm going to test you. You won't get graded, but what would be your favorite Yiddish expression or word, each of you, and tell me what it means. Go ahead.
Okay, a karger est zup mit a guppel und treisel noch ab.
Okay, I got zup, which is soup,
Right.
and that's about all. Help me,
Okay.
tell me what it is.
Means a stingy individual eats soup with a fork and still pours some more.
All right, now, why is that your favorite expression?
Well, because in a comical way, it really shows how terrible it is to be so stingy.
And it's
But it's a light vein.
you speak other languages as well, don't you? What
Well,
are the
we're
languages?
learning,
What are you learning to speak?
French and Spanish and a little bit of Hebrew also.
Would you be able to find an expression in any one of the other languages that could possibly fit that first one, the one about the stingy fork and soup?
No, not that I can
Probably
think
not.
of, really.
What's yours? Tell me what yours is, Gina.
Lekt nicht kein Honig,
Which is?
which means literally he doesn't lick honey, but it's idiomatic and it means he doesn't have it so good.
And again, I put that question to you. Would you have found
No,
another
I-
language to express it as well?
I don't think so.
Are you both studying, you both sing, and, well, I know in advance what you're going to do. You're going to sing for us. And we've got two songs prepared. We're going to start, at least for now, with Lommer Singen. Tell me what it means, and then we'll get you over to the piano to sing.
It means let us sing.
Simply let us sing, the joyous Yiddish language.
Yes.
Okay. You want to go on over to the piano, and we're going to listen to you sing? Go ahead.
Okay.
And while you're going over there, I want to tell you that you have an accompanist. Her name is Malka Gottlieb. And Malka, hit it.
Lass mir singen ein Yiddish Lied. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Wegen, ein jeder Schmied. In sein Schmied, in sein Schmied, in sein Schmied, der Schmiederei, in sein Schmied, der Schmiederei, in sein Schmied, der Schmiederei.
That was beautiful. Come on back. That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Professor Schaechter,
Here
I'm
I
back
am.
again to you. You didn't
Okay.
leave. Wasn't that nice?
Very good.
Do your children, you said you have 4 children. Did they also sing Yiddish?
A little bit.
A little. That's the answer that I gave my Russian taxi driver, Abyssal, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
quite
Let-
a bit.
Quite Abyssal. Let's talk about Yiddish cultural institutions, because I know that there are many existing institutions, and I need your help in explaining what some of them are. We'll start out, because the girls mentioned Workman's Circle before. I'd like to get some description on what Workman's Circle is. Would you tell me?
The Workman's Circle is a Jewish fraternal organization which was formed in 1892 and provides both certain benefits, social benefits, as well as cultural effects. Excuse me.
So, yes, and the people that form the Workman's Circle have come to the States from various countries
Yes.
in Europe, and they, for the most part, I guess, when they came, they settled in on the Lower East Side in New
Well,
York.
first on the Lower East Side, they had the Landsmannschaften, which was the predecessor of the Workman's Circle and of other fraternal organizations.
Yes.
But the Workman's Circle provided more than the Landsmannschaften, not just companionship, but also cultural activities.
Well, for
School movement.
yes.
They have a semi-professional theater group, the Volksbühne.
Let me show you. I have some pictures. I was fumbling around here because you're talking about the other institution. For the in the Workman's Circle, I think you will tell me this is Children on Parade, is it? Is
Yes.
it one of the activities that the
Yes,
Workman's
they had
Circle sponsors?
at one time quite a large school movement.
Can you get a picture of that here? Got that?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
They have, as I mentioned before, the Volksbühne, a theatrical group. They organize.
Is
Do
this?
you have pictures of the Volksbühne?
I have concerts in the park.
Okay,
I
they
think I
have
have,
concerts
I
in the
think there's
park.
another one.
They have poetry readings. If I'm
Let's
not
see.
mistaken, I see the pictures of the Volksbühne here.
Then take it out. Let's see. Okay.
This one is
There you go.
one of them. Zelda's and Moshe Rosenfeld.
This is a performance of what?
I couldn't tell you, since you picked
But
it,
it was
not
a
me.
good one, I'm sure,
Yes.
whatever it was. All right, and then
this is Bulov, another famous,
Can we
not
see
another,
that?
one of
Right
the
here.
famous
Yes?
actors of the Yiddish scene
Okay.
in another play, but
All right, and then the Workmen's Circle has a school, and that's where Gina.
has many schools.
Oh, and this is
Well,
this is what
had many
Gina and
schools.
Rina are going to now in Manhattan. Now, YIVO is another institution which many Jews, particularly here in New York, have heard of. You want to tell me what YIVO? Explain to me what YIVO actually is.
Well, YIVO is a Yiddish scholarly institution, first formed in Europe as a monolingual institute. Now it's a bilingual institute, Yiddish and English, headquartered in New York. I'll give you one instance of the activities of the YIVO. In all developing countries or developing languages, there is a lack of technical terms. So whenever there was a need, for instance, for a word like mortality rate, either the YIVO or at that time there were institutes in Minsk and Kiev, which were later liquidated. They were the organizations, the institutions providing the help, coining the words, helping in the language building process, helping in the standardization of the language. Today, the institutes in Minsk and Kiev don't exist anymore, and the YIVO is doing this work.
All
And some other allied groups, like the Committee for the Implementation of the Standardized Yiddish
I
Orthography.
think now, briefly, we're showing the building, which is here in Manhattan. That is the
Yes.
YIVO Institute. Is that correct? Where is
Yes.
that building?
That's 86th Street and 5th Avenue.
And this is the newest YIVO building because there were other YIVO buildings in Manhattan before.
Yes.
Right. Now, there are Yiddish summer camps, and I know that they can be divided into groups religious and not religious.
Yes.
Isn't there a famous Yiddish summer camp called Boiberik? What is Boiberik?
There are two well-known Yiddish summer camps, Boiberik and Hemshech. Boiberik is the older one. It was formed in the 20s by the Yiddish school movement known as the Shalom Aleichem Folk Institute, and it has built an excellent reputation both with its children's camp as well as with its guest side. The guest side has, it's a resort hotel,
Yes.
but not with a tall building, with small bungalows, with many cultural activities going on, with a famous tree under which many lectures were delivered and are still being delivered by Yiddish writers, Yiddish scholars, and so on.
Now, talking about Yiddish writers, I, being a newspaper person, think about the Yiddish press. And I know I have some copies. Gina and Rina were looking at them before. But tell me about the Yiddish press. How many papers are there? How are they published? When? Where?
The Yiddish press in the United States nowadays consists of 2 dailies, 5 weeklies, and 33 monthlies, quarterlies, or yearly and irregular publications.
Now, in these publications, what kind of news is reported? Let's say in the dailies, what kind of news is reported?
The Yiddish dailies in New York report primarily news of Jewish interest, although
Give me a specific example. What would be, I mean, you can even take a look. Since I cannot read it, you could tell me, let's say, what the headline is on the Allgemeiner Journal,
well,
for instance. What
the
would
headline says
in English, what would it, if you
Carter
could,
makes efforts to win the confidence of the Jewish population.
all right. Now, the other one is the Forbitz. That's right. Tell me what the Forbitz is headlining.
PLO delegation will fly to Moscow for the purpose of organizing a Palestine government in exile.
Now, would you say, in general, I presume that you have a chance to read the Yiddish press.
Yes.
So would you say, in general, that when the Yiddish press headlines a story, or almost any story they would have in here, would be something pertaining to Jewish life or Jewish interests?
In the Allgemeiner Journal, I would say exclusively. The Vorwärts has also news of a more general interest, political news that don't necessarily have a Jewish point of view.
And there are journals as well. I think, am I holding
That's
is
one of them.
one of the journals? Okay. What is in here? Is this literary? Are these
No, this is a
showcase?
scholarly.
This is a
This
scholarly
is a scholarly
journal.
publication called Yiddish Sprach,
And what would
published
be
by the YIVO.
and what would be in
It
Yiddish?
fits in with what I mentioned before about standardizing the language. This is a journal devoted to the problems of standard Yiddish.
And well, now the problem is that there are too many dialects. There are too many.
This is
what-
not a problem.
What would we need to standardize Yiddish?
The standardization consists of setting up generally accepted rules, of picking one variant, and this one belongs the correct form. This is done not
Is
only
it-
in Yiddish, but in
It's
most
grammatical. Is that what
grammatical,
it is? Syntactical.
stylistic.
Tell me, there is another question I have. We talk about journals, we talk about the Yiddish press. What about Yiddish books? Is it true that there are many Yiddish books published every year? New books.
Many. This is a very relative concept. Yes, there are many. Not as many as we would like to, because the publishing costs are prohibitive. And for this reason, most of the writers in the United States, Yiddish writers, publish their works in Israel, where printing is not as expensive, although quite expensive too.
I must ask the girls, if Gina and Rina, if you get a chance to read any Yiddish papers, or if you read journals, do you keep up on your Jewish periodical reading?
Well, we don't
Are you
read
proficient
so
in
much,
that?
but we can sometimes, manage to read a couple of things.
Are you
in the
able to
paper.
read, let's say, a Yiddish short story?
Yes. Oh, sure. We can read short stories.
And some of the authors of Yiddish short stories would be familiar to most people. Would they be Isaac Bashevis Singer?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Yod Lamed Peretz, Shalom Aleichem.
Oh. And these are stories that the two of you read together. You read part of your schooling, or when do you? Is it enjoyment? Would you, for instance, pick up a Yiddish short story and just read it for fun?
Sure.
Yeah.
I love reading the literature.
And do you do the same thing in your other languages as well?
Sure. It's the same thing.
It's just all part of it, and this is. Do you find, though, that the stories that you read from, let's say, generations past are applicable? Are there morals in there? Are there stories in there? We think about so much literature being timeless. Can you say the same for what you've read?
Definitely. One of the things I really enjoyed the most about reading Yiddish short stories, because there usually is some kind of moral side to it, some kind of point that the story is trying to make.
And they're kind of nice old-fashioned types of stories?
Yeah, yes.
Yes,
yeah,
they
I'd
are?
say.
Okay. I want to talk about one other organization, a Yiddish cultural institution. I'm going to label it as such. I can hardly wait to show this. This has been the pride of my life for the past 2 days since I've had it. Please, everybody take a look. What is it? There you go. That says
Yiddish.
And it's a Yiddish T-shirt. And I think, if you would tell me, does this have something to do with Jugendtruf, which is the Yiddish youth movement?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Jugendtruf.
Jugendtruf is a youth group, high school and college students, organized about 14 years ago. They publish a quarterly in Yiddish. They organize hootenannies, picnics in Yiddish, of course.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Have
you been?
They are about to publish a record album with songs written by young Yiddish poets and music by young Yiddish composers.
And is it true that there are something like 30 universities, colleges across the country that are teaching Yiddish now?
More or less, yes.
We have very brief amount of time left. Would you just tell me what foundations there are for the perpetuation of Yiddish?
Oh, there are a number of foundations now. The Zelig Foundation for a Living Yiddish, the Fruchtbaum Foundation, the Chanin Foundation, the Zhitlovsky Foundation.
And these are funding what? What do they
They fund various Yiddish cultural projects. The Zelic Foundation, for instance, is funding the publication of a textbook for intermediate Yiddish courses, which is now being field tested in various colleges.
So that's some kind of an example of what the foundations are
Yes,
doing.
yes.
Girls, would you kind of quickly go back to the piano, because I'm going to have to thank you. The time is out. Go ahead over and start singing. You want to do Rachala, and we'll hear the beginning of a song about Rachala. I'd like to thank my special guest today, Professor Mordkhe Schaechter, for being with us, and also our two lovely entertainers, Gina and Rina Rinkewich, and their accompanist, Malka Gottlieb. I'm Cynthia Tivers. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.